Do you want to relax? Are you having trouble sleeping or focusing? CBD reduces anxiety, chronic pain, seizures, PTSD, depression. Try our CBD gummies or chocolates. You will be very satisfied. Visit cbdcollections.net. cbdcollections.net. cbdcollections.net.
Hi, folks. Chris Daly here. It's good to always talking with Jamaicans doing awesome things. And today we have a repeat person. Her name is Hope Alison Robinson. She's a local author from Virginia. Last time we talked, she had just published Allie's Apple Days, and now she's released that promise book she talked about, Zach Snacks. She also has several other books in the queue. But today we're going to be talking about Zach Snacks. For those who may be new to who Hope is, she was born in Jamaica from the parish of St. Elizabeth. She moved to the United States at age 14. She loves opportunities to influence kids' life for their learning, and that's why she's into writing books. So let's get to know Hope a little and then find out a little more about Zach Snacks. Hello, Hope. Welcome.
Thank you for having me again, Chris. It's always a pleasure.
Fantastic. So we know some new folks on the podcast may not know of you. Tell us a little about your Jamaican roots.
So as you alluded to, I was born in Jamaica, specifically in Goshen, a center section of the island. I am about 90 miles from Kingston and about 60 miles from Montego Bay. And I had the privilege of having lower school and attending 2 years of high school before I left the island.
Neat. So that's good. So you immigrated, but it seemed like writing has always been important to you. But beyond the writing, you also do some other stuff. You want to tell us a little about what else you do? You're very accomplished.
Well, thank you. Writing is a passion for me. It's something I do on the side because, as you said, I am a full-time employee, so I'm in the science field. I'm a biologist, to be specific, and I work with the government, with the patent office, and I do a lot of writing in that job. And so, as I said, writing has been something that I've always liked and got started taking it more seriously in high school.
Okay, so in high school, when you discovered you had this, did you have anybody type of help you nurture this and develop your gift?
Well, in growing up, I was a shy child, and I came out of a big family, and I found that I could express myself through words, and I loved reading, so that helps to build your vocabulary, which is part of the reason that I am in this business to begin with, is to push for children to learn more through reading. And the validation that I had for myself was in high school, there was a Black History Month contest, and I did an essay on Mary McLeod Bethune, and I won an award. So I've had the gratification as well as the validation to say that I do have something, and to pursue that because as I said, I liked writing.
Great. For those of us who have experienced some of your other writings, we know you're a great storyteller. How do you go about selecting a topic to write about?
Well, in all honesty, my first 3 books was inspired by God. And when I say inspired by God, I literally had to run and get a pen and paper to write information down that flooded me in that moment. I've always been writing and keeping my books inside of a binder. And unfortunately, with going through some family issues, that was taken from me, and
Mm.
I just was sitting down and being pensive about what should I do, start over, because I had written so much. And
Yes.
in that moment, I got the idea to do these books and the information of what I should put in these books. And so I wrote it out in short notation on the napkin. And after I got what I needed, then I expanded on it, shortly after that time period. But during COVID, I felt the need to put these books out to be able to help other children, because I saw the struggles of my own. And I thought it'd be a good for children to be reading, because a lot of them were isolated from schools.
Right.
And some were virtual, but some were completely isolated from schools. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity, because when they're on screens, it hurts their eyes, and you're using a lot of the frontal lobe of your brain and not necessarily the rest of your brain, depending on what they're doing on screen, if it's gaming, for
Right.
example. And so, whereas reading is going to give them the opportunity to use their imagination more and to tap into sections of the brain that they might not be using. And so that was part of my motivation. But the first book, Ali's Apple Days, my daughter, Allison, the storyline really about her, and not that she took apples to school, but she was very fascinated with apples at a young age, and
Right.
still into growing up, she still loves certain apples and stuff. And then the second book, the title of the books, as you asked, how did I come up with them? They're
Yes.
based on the fact that my son Zachary, Zach Snacks, Boca Dios de Zach, he was always fascinated with snacks. and so snacks in the car, snacks before bedtime, he had his favorite snacks. So
Nice.
those are the books that I have so far.
Yeah, to speak a little more to parents, you gave some really good tips about the parts of the brain that are developed depending if they're gaming versus reading. Any other tips you would have for parents to nurture the thinking skills of their children?
Oh, most definitely. My first degree is in early education. So it covers psychology, and it covers the development of a child from in utero up and through what we consider to be senescence, which is the old age, and into, our transition. But that being said, children need to be exposed very early to language, not just the English language that may be their core language, but to foreign languages. And so they need that as soon as possible, really. You can start reading a parent can read to their child from they're told that they're pregnant. Basically, a lot of the materials that are needed for a child is formulated in the 6 months of being pregnant. You have things working, systems are on board, and so on. So you can read to your child during pregnancy, and some research has shown that between 0 to 6 years is the critical time period to expose a child to a different language, and where they will be able to now master that language into fluency. And there's also some research that says as long as it's before age 10, but then they've actually had research to demonstrate that if you are past 18, if there's a dramatical drop off, and you will be struggling. That doesn't mean you can't learn a language, but it's going to be very difficult to become fluent.
Is that why this book is bilingual?
Yes, it is. And I did it for many reasons. One of the reasons is because I myself come from a bilingual background. My maternal grandparents, my granddad was born and raised in Panama, and my grandmother was born in Jamaica. However, she spent her early years in Panama. And so I come from that background, and also I exposed my children very early to languages, and have, asked them to be mastery of at least a second language, and they have been very cooperative with that and are doing it. So I wanted to encourage others to do the same, because language is so important. We have a country that is very multifaceted when it comes to the people that are here and the languages that are represented in the United States,
Right.
for example.
This is neat. So, the book's been out for a couple of months now. What are some of the feedback you've been getting about the book?
Well, I had one person, I just had a book signing with Barnes & Noble in my area, and I sold 33 books at that book signing. And there were folks that said, I don't speak Spanish. And I explained to them that the book is completely in English as well. And so you don't shy away from buying it, because it's bilingual. It's fully in English. And what I did was align the English with the Spanish. And I did that on purpose, because it's important for the child to see what the English is, but what it looks like in Spanish. And yes,
Sure.
They might not have mastery over pronouncing the Spanish, but they can make an attempt. And there's some words, such as sandwich is in the book, and the word sandwich is the same in Spanish, except it has an accent on the first A. So there's things that they'll be able to recognize, and they can try and make an attempt to pronounce. And the parents can also learn with the child in trying to accomplish that. But I tried to make sure I had friends that helped me I did the translation myself. However, I had two Spanish, one person was a native Spanish person and the other person learned Spanish. And I had both of them, a teacher of Spanish, as well as a friend that was born to the language Spanish. I had both of them to review the book so that we brought the language as close to a child as possible, because Spanish is the type of language that has formal Spanish. For example, if you were saying tú, which means you, that would be considered like a colloquial or informal way to say you. And if you said something like usted, which also means you, that's more of a formal way to speak you. So basically, and Spanish also has a feminine and a masculine way that they represent the language. So that also is something that you have to recognize, and the accents make a difference where they're placed, because it makes you pronounce the words different, and it also can give a different meaning to the word. So I was also very careful about that and wanted to make sure that when the book went out, it represented accurately what that should look like. And I was trained in Spanish, so I know how to read and write, and I also understand enough of the language to speak it.
This is great. So you're increasing people's reading, and then you also give them in wet language for young age. This is really well thought out. How can people get a copy of this fine work?
So it's at Barnes & Noble by order, and also through Amazon by order. And you can also, it's got an Audible book as well, so that they can get that to an Audible device.
Wow, this is really good. So you have various formats in language and in both written and in audio.
And it's also international, Chris, through Ingram. I didn't want to cut you off. I just wanted to let you know that as well.
This is wonderful. Well, we know your pen, the ink hasn't run dry yet, and it's probably active. What can we expect from you in the near future?
Well, my third book, Nate Eats, for my third child, Nathan, that will be coming out next year sometime. And I have a fourth book, and The fourth book, I am still working on finalizing that. I have a family member that is helping me with some illustrations on that. And that book I dedicated to my two grandmothers. Earlier this year, I lost my second grandmother. And so that book is educational as well, but it's going to be reflective of how they were. And I've got some others that are in different stages. I have a combination book, which will be sort of like a chapter book. And then I do have some books that will represent science.
This is wonderful. And the parting words you have for our audience?
I want to continue to encourage parents to cut back on screen time and encourage children to read and go to the libraries, the local libraries, and spend an hour in a library, but get out there and read. You can never read too much. It builds language and it helps children to express themselves in another way other than oral. And any schooling that a child goes through, they will have to write. And so whether it's a sentence or an essay or a dissertation or thesis later in life, in some capacity you have to write. And also in your jobs, a lot of jobs require writing, such as ours, right, Chris? So writing is important, and you need to continue to build your vocabulary to be able to express yourself in written form. So it's an important thing to start early, and that's my goal, is to inspire kids to pick up books again. I try to make them colorful, and I try to encompass sharing and caring into it, and not just the educational piece of you're learning numbers or learning rhyming or learning a language. So I make sure that my books are diverse in the representation of the children in the books, as well as, to try to capitalize on as much learning information as I can squeeze in.
That's wonderful.
And thank you for having me.
Thank you for spending some time with us, and folks. You want to bless your kids this Christmas, this holiday season, go out and get some books for them and make the top of the books Zach's Snacks. Thank you so much, Hope, for being with us this afternoon.
No problem. Thank you. All the best. In the books, as well as, to try to capitalize on as much learning information as I can squeeze in.
That's wonderful.
And thank you for having me.
Thank you for spending some time with us, and folks. You want to bless your kids this Christmas, this holiday season, go out and get some books for them and make the top of the books Zach's Snacks. Thank you so much, Hope, for being with us this afternoon.
No problem. Thank you. All the best.